Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today for our second video on the ancestries of the world of Golarion. Today, Dwarves. Just like with Elves last time, my main reason for writing this one is small, lesser known facts hidden in Pathfinder lore, but I need to go through the basics, and that will end up going through most of the video, so. Plus, since we just did Toreg, the stereotypical Dwarven god, looking at some lesser known information will be a nice change of pace. So let's get started. First, looking at the basics, let's look at the history of Dwarves. The Dwarves once lived under the surface of Golarion, believing that they were created by the god Toreg when he created the world. Then one day, they received a prophecy from Toreg, the legendary crest for sky. He ordered upon them to go and reach the distant surface, touch the distant sky. And so they charged forth, letting nothing stand in their way. This included the orcs who lived above them, and whose treatment during this time led to what they still refer to as a genocide. However, after countless generations of hard work, the Dwarves finally find themselves under the light of the sun. Which brings us to our first side tangent, where our careful craft and years of work finally reach fruit. Today, our first entry is another book from Arcane Anthology, The Tome of Stone Wardens. This is said to have been the life's work of a single Dwarven wizard, whose training was beginning when the quest for Sky began, and who died the day a route to the surface was finally found. This book records an entire lifetime of fighting against the monsters of the Darklands, and various spells designed to help the march towards the surface. This is an interesting book, as it is basically the basic text for Dwarven wizards, already a deviation from stereotypes. Though there is some debate whether the legendary Stone Warden actually even existed, or whether it was a compilation of multiple wizards. Emerging from the underground, the Dwarves fortify themselves into positions by creating 10 Sky Citadels. These were created to give the people solid footholds on the surface, while also keeping the tunnels back down under their control, where they could keep a constant eye on the creatures of the Darklands. Then, they created a nation which spanned across the Ethnicity region, Tar Tagoth, made in unity of all 7 citadels. Wait, 7? Did I not just say there was 10? Well, the Dwarves were still at constant war with the orcs, who they had forced to the surface, who managed to, one by one, crush the citadels. The United 7 managed to last 1,000 years, but eventually even that number broke down when the Citadel of Koldakar was captured, becoming the orc capital of Orgir in the hold of Belkzen. Afterward, for their own reasons, the holds either fell or lost contact with the central Dwarven government. Eventually, all that remained of Tar Tagoth was the Dwarven capital of Highhelm. And in the wake of the collapse, the mountain found it divided by 5 brothers, which is where it became 5 Kings Mountains. They carved a face in the mountains to prove it. Also, the nations have had 5 civil wars against each other over the years. But do not fret. Eventually, that was solved by the orcs taking control of all of the mountain except Highhelm. You can see how this goes. Years of division, years of dragons blowing up one of the largest volcanoes in the region, years of peace, and then everything starts over again. Present day, it has been 250 years since any single dwarf was able to unite the mountain, and the last time was under the worship of Droskar. So Central Dwarven society is currently unstable, but still standing because, well, they be dwarfs made. But what are dwarfs? Appearance-wise, they are short and stout, being clearly different from other short races. They have earthen-colored skin and a wide variety of eye colors. Same with hair, though they gray or bald easily on their head. Face-wise, there are a few male dwarfs without a beard or mustache, and some females, but despite stereotypes, only certain ethnicities have females with beards. That said, they trade off by caring for their long hair, as the males their beard. Either way, both forms of hair are well taken care of, fancifully braided, and incorporate a variety of dyes, beads, wax, and bones. Dwarves have great dark vision, but prefer light because they cannot see in color. In the dark. They can see in color in the light, though. That said, they do paint paintings which can only be fully appreciated by those with night vision. That's right, Dwarven painters. We are already breaking down so many boundaries. Same with their sense of taste. They have a keen sense of taste which allows them to fully appreciate savory meals with a variety of flavors, textures, and complexity, especially alcohol. This is the reason so many dwarves look down on other cultures' food. Dwarves, for their own protection, organize themselves into clans, extended families which number in the hundreds, if not thousands. They are known to be able to trace their lineage back generations, sometimes all the way back to the quest for Sky. The greatest punishment for dwarves is exile from one's clan, and those who find themselves in that position quickly go insane. Dwarves are known for their fondness of their homes. There are some dwarves who boast that they have spent centuries never seeing beyond their city walls. Of course, there are still a decent number of dwarves who do travel, but they are known for their love of home, and respect for those who are long past. Tradition has been part of Dwarven society since the days they used it to count the passage of time in the Darklands. And all innovations need to be tested to exhaustion before a dwarf would consider it good enough. This usually translates to centuries of research. Dwarves believe their birthright is to create. Traditional smithing and handicrafts. Perfectionists, I might add. The slightest flaw in their work, they start from scratch, and they repair whatever they can over replacing it. Of course, their work also relies on what they refer to as colo, also known as aesthetics on everyday things. This includes small details which few editors might realize exists, like clothes which have ancestors' names on buttons, or a beer stein with the story of an ancestor emblazoned all across it. Even bells might have special designs to make them easier to carry. Though, of course, much of these include practical uses, because without it, there is no use to it. Final big thing to talk about is grudges. This dates back to the days in Darklands, where one uncooperative or accident-prone ally could spell death to a whole clan. They make sure to pass grudges on to their children, mostly for the purpose of lessons, but sometimes just pure rancor against others is passed on. Though many young dwarves are able to, hopefully, grow up sorting the wise from the racist. Also, forgiving others is seen as a weakness for dwarves, so remember that when dealing with them. Now, a quick look at the different ethnicities of dwarves. Dwarves are broken down into three main subgroups: the Holtosksen, or mountain dwarfs, the Egaksen, or surface dwarfs, and the Gradaksen, or underground dwarfs. Let's break these down one by one. To get the easy one out of the way, the Gradaksen are those dwarves who saw Tureg's prophecy as a call to reach the surface, but not to stay there. They remain underground, taking only news from outside from surface dwarves about ancient agreement. They appear shorter than other dwarves, and even the women have long beards. They are also known to live in a cycle of 32 hours due to living without the sun, which they call a forge day. Because the only known ethnicity among the Gweniskin are the Kulanet, who live in caves below Geb, who use their tunnels to transport goods from the coast to beneath the Shattered Range. And yes, all the subgroups have multiple ethnicities among them. Despite the insistence, each of the subgroups are all the same. Next, we'll go to the Holkuksen, the dwarves who think that the dwarves that we think of when we think of dwarves. However, despite most of the stereotype of them being the same, they themselves think all Holkuksen are the same. They have one major difference in Sky Citadels. Each Sky Citadel, especially after Targoth fell, forced the Holkuksen to adapt in different ways. But we will talk about that when we talk about Citadels later. Third, we have the Ilgunsen, with those being clearly different from each other, even though other dwarves just treat them all as the same. There are 5 we know of. Of course, we have full cultural information on 2 of them, and 2 with barely anything besides a paragraph. And the 2 we know the most about are the Mbeke from West Moragni Expanse and the Tularu who wanted the Moragni Expanse. And you can get information on them in the Moragni Expanse. It's still a little too recent for me to break that. Anyway, for the 2 we barely know anything of, first is Parhains, a group of smiths who live in the Kedarian capital of Katir. Vahid live in the eternal races of Rahadom, and they fully embrace the law of mortality. Finally, the one who learned about the group we learned about the most in 1E was the Pamet, the Gravekeepers of Assyrian, which I already have a video on and you can learn more there. Of course, these are just the main Dwarven ethnicities. Just like Elves, there are likely others outside the Inner Sea region, which are different enough from other dwarves to be their own ethnicities. However, the only ones we know of is that Arcadia has a group of dwarves and orcs who apparently work together to reach the sky. And there were also Dragar, whose origins I talked about last week in my Tureg video, and would not go through again here. Just know that there is still a wide world out there we have only barely touched. With ethnicities down, let's take a quick look at Dwarven population centers, starting with our favorite, Sky Citadels. First, the 2 lost. With over 500 years since their fall, we have Yorbaden in northern Sarkros, which fell to Dragar long ago and is still in their possession, and Koldukar, which, as mentioned earlier, fell to Orcs and is now Orgir in the whole of Belkzen. Of the 4 we still know to exist, we have 2 that need no introduction. First, High Helm of 5 Kings Mountains, mentioned above, the Dwarven High Capital, and Dungan Hold, a citadel which once did fall, but rose again when it made a deal with the humans who formed Alcastar. Full story whenever I make that video. One I already covered in my Varisian video. Yandohof is located on the very edge of the country in the Mindspin Mountains, which form its eastern border, where it makes a nice profit through mining and trading. On the other hand of the spectrum of luck, we have Corvinkus in Talon's Woolland Mountains, whose mines have dried up long ago, and whose scarce population remains only because of Dwarvish pride. Finally, we have the in-between one, Cregaden, located on the Nithamos side of the Minespin Mountains. In between because we have information about their existence, but they have also been left off lists of citadels that have not fallen. Regardless, what can be said about the Dwarves within is that they fought with humans in the Shining Crusade against the Whispering Tyrant, but have refused to most outside contact since. But once again, Cregaden is known for... Well, one thing Cregaden is known for is our second side tangent, which needs this friendly face. Bah, mess. The Happy Salesman, because we are talking about a famed artifact which has recently changed the power dynamic in the Inner Sea region, the Onyx Key. This series of crystals is made by xenomorphs of the Plane of Earth, a portable version of their Onyx Citadel. It allows access to the stone roads, passages through the Plane of Earth that can take one to, well, anywhere. However, the Xenomorphs walked away from Golarion, leaving the key where the Dwarves who had found Cregaden could find it. Using the power of the key, they managed to complete the quest for Sky swiftly, allowing them to be one of the first citadels built. Without the same warriors as their Dwarves, they experimented with the key, and had their citadel flooded with outsiders. Almost wiped out, the Dwarves hid the key, until modern day, when the Hobgoblin Azonsi used it to lead the Iron Fang Rebellion, and formed the nation of peaceful monsters, Oprik. Well, peaceful for now at least. Of course, Dwarves have moved beyond the Citadels, especially considering there are only half of the originals left under their control. As for outside the homelands, look at the ones common for the Mountain Dwarfs. We have Kolsgar, the capital of the land of the Norm Kings, where the Dwarves live among the stones of the city, and are more willing to work with outsiders than most Dwarves. The Kodor Mountains in northern Verisian are where the largest number of outcast Dwarves live. We already mentioned the Citadels in the Minespin Mountains and the Shadowed Range, but there are also various tunnels and small fortresses in the mountains where Dwarves make small cities. Then, of course, there are the various homes of the Igoksen, some of them mentioned above, and 2 are in the Marauding Expanse book. Going quickly, since it is still recent, we have Cloudspire, which might have been one of the original 10 Sky Citadels, we don't know. Either way, it's located in the Terra Uplands and home to the Mabake. And as for the Tarulu, they are travelers, so they live all across the Expanse. And now, with that out of the way, let's get to the smaller facts. The facts I find interesting. First, we go back to senses to look at the effects of the Dwarven connection to Earth. Their stone sense allows them to feel even the slightest tremors and feel a hairline fraction. One of my sources even tells of a story of a dwarf putting their hands upon a wall for a few seconds, then turning back, able to sense all the traps in the cavern ahead. This also gives them a connection with gems and precious metals, giving them a greater idea of their value, while also making them, well, more interested in wealth. Dwarves are also slow, having the same mass as humans with half of the stature. But dwarves tend to take the slow and steady approach to this fact. That said, mocking their speed is a quick way to get under their skin. Finally, one more appearance-based mention is to expand on the Dwarven's beard decorations with the mention of beard clasps and rings. While long hair is important to Dwarves, it can also get in the way. So decorations with special clasps is not only practical, but it gives them a surface to decorate themselves. Dwarven craftsmen. Clasps are the go-to Dwarven fashion, to the point there are a few legendary clasps of heroes. And who said Dwarves cannot look fabulous? Stepping aside from their bodies, how do Dwarves fight? As in, what are typical Dwarven weapons? Well, we all know the basics, warhammers and various axes. With 2e, we have Dwarven clan daggers, or if you are from a certain Sky Citadel, clan guns. However, there is one more lost among the fray. The Dorn Dagger. This is a 10-foot-long chain attached to a metal ball. It is an exotic weapon from 1e, but it is still tied to the Dwarves. Because we do not want to leave out any Scottish influence now, do we? Then, of course, there is Dwarven Ale. Not exactly an out-there topic like I would like to have down here, because Dwarves. However, one thing of interesting note is that each of the 10 Sky Citadels crafted their own signature ale, them being the closest guarded secret of each, to the point of almost no barrels existing outside their home citadel. To this day, the search for missing recipes of fallen citadels are among the greatest possible ancestral treasures in existence. Not that any ancestries would be able to drink them, of course. Dwarves have a high magic and poison resistance, which of course leads to the traditional Dwarven contests of eating random mushrooms or plants to try to outdo their drinking buddies. Speaking of mushrooms, let us take a short stop off for another side tangent. This one, number 3. A staple of the Dwarvish diet, ironbloom mushrooms. These grow in dark places which are heavy in iron, and therefore actually grow within Dwarven forges. This also means they are not often found outside of Dwarven holdings. But when it comes to places like the Five Kings Mountains, they are a steady food supply. They are also known to be slightly salty, but relatively earthy. Also unpleasantly so if you are not a dwarf. Or, I guess, any other earth-related ancestry, but we only have information on dwarfs. One thing they are noted for is being filling with little weight to them, making them common in rations. Finally, it's me. So, religion. The main Dwarven deities are Toreg and his family, Abadar, and Iwuri. I talked about the Dwarven pantheon last week, so I'll be not be going through them again. But what I am going to talk about is spiritualism. In the darkness as they tried to reach the sky, many spiritual practices were formed to help keep the Dwarven soul alive. The most famous of them is the practice of Riverthune. They are speakers to spirits, as well as elementals, outsiders, fae, and even undead, collecting wild secrets outside the usual Dwarven purview. And they do so as negotiators, not as one would treat a deity. They claim spiritual sensitivity allows them to work with the finer details of the world around them. Some, like evolutionists, find ways to empower themselves with pieces of their own soul, allowing them greater knowledge of the souls around them. Some, known as Germinate invokers, allow spirits to possess their bodies, going into a trance not unlike a calm version of a barbarian's rage. Finally, a Riverthune channeler has a deep connection to a spirit animal, allowing them to share each other's burdens, protect spirits, fan outsiders, and strengthen their own bodies. I should also note, Withthune, with their focus on spirits, has become a welcoming place for Dwarves who wish to change their gender. And Dwarves call those who transition Withthune, despite their spiritual practices. Well, so much for Dwarven stereotypes, am I right? But while we are not going into Dwarven deities this video, we can still go through the Paladin codes, or at least where they can be found. In Divine Anthology, we have a book we covered briefly when I talked about Enderan. Today's first side tangent, the book on virtue. During the Age of Glory, Paladins worked to make a compilation of all the good-line deities who whispered to them. Not long after, Dwarven priests brought it to Five Kings Mountains, where it became popular because of the Dwarves' own polytheism. They also took the time to add the Paladin codes of their own deities to the page to discuss, with the Five Kings Mountain one now being the most complete copies. But outside of Five Kings, nations like Mendev and Lastwall have widely adapted the book. Unfortunately, nations like Geb or Rahadom have taken the book to be a tool to hunt paladins. And that gets us through this video on Dwarves. Another scattered video on an ancestry down. I'd remind you I will not do these regularly due to ancestries being a more common topic for YouTube videos like this. But I actually have another one planned relatively soon, for a similar reason I did the Dwarves after Tureg. Again, the release of Galactic Magic might get in my way, but that is for next month, me to worry about. Next week, let's say we take a little vacation somewhere. Where? Well, you will have to see next time.